doubt that. Well, I'm just kidding. You know, with PD and fire, as well outfitted as we are, as Chief Brown really summed it up, is that, and I'll get into that more in a minute, but with the specialized areas that both police and fire have, we just couldn't do it. We couldn't have our own bomb team and our own hazmat team and swift water team and technical rescue team at Euless, because as a community, the call volume is not there, and we just couldn't afford it. And it really ties in exactly to what the Chief said, and I'll give you some examples of that here in a moment. But we'll give you kind of a breakdown of our NEFTA member cities. Whenever it was started, it was actually called NEFTUF with a T. It was Northeast Fire Training Association, and it was started in the 70s, and not all of these cities were a part of it. Euless is a founding member of NEFTA, and it was started in Haltom City, actually, at a training field off of Minnesota 121, and fire departments, Bedford, Colleyville, Euless, Grapevine, Haltom City, Hurst, and Richland Hills were a part of that founding group, and they joined together to do joint training there, do fire training, ladder training, repelling pit fires, things like that that they focused on at that time. And as it grew over the years to what we have today, when you group all of the cities together, of these 14 member cities, you have a population of 438,000 plus people. Now, when you take that and compare it statewide, you've got Houston at 2.1 million, San Antonio at 1.4, Dallas 1.2 million, Austin 888,000, El Paso at 674, and then if you count NEFTA as one big group, we're ahead of Arlington. And where that plays into is in grant funding, really. We do work or try to work as one big department. We share services every day, and you can see we're 178 square miles, 35 fire stations, and 654 firefighters strong, and a lot of calls for service when you group us all together, and I'll show you some more on the inventory in a minute. So you take some of our department information and group us all together, you've got that 654 firefighters, and in NEFTA, our minimum staffing is 158 firefighters every day. And when you look at all of the department budgets, you've got quite a big organization here that will rival some of the biggest departments across the state. Now, this is the breakdown of NEFTA, of all of the member cities, as it as we are surrounded by, for the most part, Fort Worth and DFW Airport. And this is some of our services. We provide all of the cities together, provide these services: communication support, decontamination support, and I'm going to get in a little more, if we have time, we'll talk a little bit more about that. Explosives response team, hazardous materials response, light and air, mass casualty, which is located here in Euless, mobile command post, urban search and rescue, and swift water. And I'm going to give you a little better definition of those here in just a moment. This is where the equipment is placed. You've got Hazmat 24 in North Richland Hills. You've got Hazmat 66. That's the two hazardous materials response teams in NEFTA, and where the pieces of equipment are placed respectively in NEFTA. Then you get into mass casualty here in our city, technical rescue in Haltom City, heavy rescue in Grapevine. North Richland Hills has the bomb team, and you've got light and air in Bedford, and mass decon in Colleyville, and I believe that's it. So here is some of our current apparatus. All of these vehicles, with the exception of two that I'll point out, were all purchased through Homeland Security grant funding. And that's where you saw that greater than $5 million in inventory. After 9/11, kind of the floodgates were opened there for a little while across the country to fortify and allow the public safety to reinforce what their capabilities are. We had some of these to a degree. We had the, actually on this page, These are all new teams, or new capabilities. We did not have a mass casualty unit prior to this grant, which went in effect in 2003. And then the rescue units here, the one in Haltom City and the one here in Grapevine, were all purchased by grant funds. And I'll explain more about those here momentarily. Then you've got the EOD, which is Explosives Ordnance Disposal. That's in the North Richland Hills. When you see the numbers here, that designates the county number, okay? So all of the NEFTA departments use the county numbers, and that's where we're 55 here in Euless, and you've got North Hills is 22. Let's see here, give you Bedford is 15, and that's where when you see or hear something on the radio and you hear that designation, that's all referencing the county numbers. The light and air vehicle is kind of unique because it was purchased through NEFTA funding alone. We did not get any grant funding for that vehicle. In 2003, we purchased that vehicle from our dues structure, and we paid it off about 2, maybe 3 years ago. And I'll show you when it's up for replacement here in just a second. It's the busiest vehicle in NEFTA. It provides nighttime light operations, and also back here in the back is a cascade system for compressed air to refill our breathing apparatus. Are we good on time still? Okay. And here's a mobile command post unit that police and fire has the capability of using. It was actually purchased by the City of Bedford with City of Bedford funds. Whoops, hit that accidentally. That unit has been used throughout Tarrant County. I do not know how many times. I do know that I have had the opportunity or misfortune to have to call it out on a few big incidents, and it is very beneficial to have. You're able to manage your entire incident command structure out of that vehicle, and you could look at it. Bedford will send it to you if somebody had a tornado or a major flood or a large-scale fire. You would be able to call that unit and utilize it in that capacity. The mass decon unit, it's been in Colleyville for quite some time, but it was also a grant-funded piece of equipment too. What it does is it allows us to decontaminate a large number of people at one time. And whether it's intentional or unintentional, from a toxin or exposure to a hazardous materials or whatever you might be able to picture, that unit can be set up. And I don't have a picture of the tent, but it's got a big old portable tent, and people would go through it and they would put gowns on. It's got a hot water heater, a portable hot water heater, and they would be deconned at the scene or in the parking lot of a hospital or a shopping mall or whatever the situation would be. We would be able to decontaminate them so they could be put in ambulances or helicopters or transported, and they don't contaminate the hospital. And that's why in some cases this type of unit could be set up right in the middle of right outside of a hospital parking lot, and we would decontaminate people before they went to the hospital. Military grade Zodiac rescue boats. Euless is another big player in swift water. So here in Euless, we have a bomb technician. We have hazmat team members. We are part of the swift water team and mass casualty. So we are very involved in Northeast Tarrant County as a participating team member with other cities. I give you this picture because I did not have a good one of Euless's, unfortunately. I had one in the Bay that just didn't show up real well. But we have the exact same unit, and Haltom City, Hurst, Bedford, and Euless make up the swift water team. If we deploy one unit, or we have a water rescue in Northeast Tarrant County, 2 boats are going to go. And we kind of follow this one in, one out, as we call it. That way, if somebody gets in trouble, and it has happened in Northeast Tarrant County, where personnel trying to do a water rescue got in trouble, and that way we've got another team to back them up. So that's why we have 4. Our sister city, so to speak, is Hurst. So if we get deployed, Hurst and Euless roll together, and then Bedford and Haltom City are the other. Recommended fee structure. You've got 2 ways that is done. You've got your operational dues, which is a flat fee $4,500 per city, from most populated down to, we'll take Westlake with 1,050 people. That structure then of the $4,500 base fee is tied in with a per capita fee based off of your population. And you can see here in our base operational dues of $8,100, that is also figured percentage-wise, and that is, don't pay attention to this right now. I will talk more about this line item here in a second. But the operational component is the maintenance of hazmat suits and gas detectors and keeping other loose equipment that we have in NEFTA for the bomb team and the decon unit and mass casualty. When our supplies run out or need to be replaced, that's where we go and get these dues here, fees to cover those miscellaneous items. We follow the same fiscal format as we do here in Euless, and that is our operating budget. Over here on the capital due structure is something that we are just now in our second year of, and what that has done for us is to have an estimated vehicle replacement program in place. So these grant vehicles that were purchased predominantly in 2003 and 2004, their life cycle doesn't just go and fall off. We have set a level of service, and we are in the process of starting this replacement program. Like I said, we're in year 2 of the program. Our first vehicle that is due for replacement will be the air and light unit in 2018. We're probably going to do a re-chassis on it to save a little money, like we do with our medics. And because these vehicles just don't get the sheer mileage on them that you would compare to an engine or a medic or something like that. One of the things I also wanted to mention to you, and I'm just flying through this to be aware of time, is every day, I'll back up real quick. Oops. That's kind of neat, but it's every day we have 10 battalion chiefs on duty in NEFTA. We have 23 fire engines in service, 12 quints, 8 trucks, and 27 medic units. And where that is important for us to pay attention to is just in HEB alone, we have 9 medics in service every day. And you compare that to some of your services like a MedStar system, they do peak call staffing. They may ramp up on Friday and Saturday night, and then on the weekend or the rest of the week they drop way down. They may have 35 units on the street in the Fort Worth system-wide. But when you compare us to a land area and per capita, we are very well set up, and we share those resources every day to minimize that cost to some degree. I told you the light and air unit was the most busiest unit in NEFTA. They run about 2 to 3 times a month, so they're not running the wheels off of them. The next busiest unit is the bomb unit. The bomb unit, believe it or not, has some months where it may only run 1 call. A couple of months ago, they had like 4 calls in Northeast Tarrant County. Some of them were, pretty minor things. Occasionally, we'll have a situation where somebody has found an improvised device. Military ordnance is not uncommon. Probably the most common scenario, and that I have seen in my career, is the left briefcase or the bag or something like that out in a parking lot. And then the times that we live in, that's a suspicious, I've seen the water cannon that we use for the bomb team blow those things all over the parking lot, and there's just nothing in there but clothes or papers or something like that. So, but the air light's the busiest, bomb team is next, and it just kind of falls off from there. One of the things that I did not share with you, and I want to real quick, is these rescue units. These 2 units up in the upper corners are primarily for collapse, building collapse, high angle, confined space, machinery entrapment, something like that. Those guys, that's their main focus, and that's what they train on and specialize in that. And that is predominantly out of Haltom City and Grapevine. Our mass casualty unit, we do that solely in NEFTA, and that unit right there can treat up to about 60 people if we had a bad bus accident or something like that, we can set them up through triage and get them tagged, identified, and transported to the area hospitals that they need to go to. And that's the vehicle that would respond anywhere in NEFTA if we had that type of situation. And I tried to go through this and give you as much information as I can. Do y'all have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Does the bomb squad semi, the total explosive device thing still exist?
It is around, and it's a trailer unit, and what it is, and see, there's different ones out there. DFW Airport has a sphere type thing, and they detonate it inside, and they just have a relief valve that just lets that pressure off. Ours was a big, open kind of unit where you would take and set it in there, and it would direct the device or the explosion, if there was one, just up into the atmosphere and keep it contained. So for the most part, when they confiscate stuff now, they go out to a remote site in the county or outside the county, and they try to burn it and get rid of it that way. And from time to time, they will try to detonate it to see what it does.
So I think when you go back to the slide where you had the cost there, you can see for, I think our cost in that, here, $26,000 some odd dollars, I think is what.
Yes.
Euless's cost to participate in that, and of course you've got your normal operating costs of the firemen that are assigned to the various crews and so forth. But that's a tremendous amount of resources that you're receiving the access to, I guess I would say, in the event that you ever need them. You certainly hope you never do, but that's certainly a good deal in comparison to what it would take us to try to do those things by ourselves.
Or even if you had to pay, let's say every city had their own little thing, and you had to pay another city to come with their rescue unit or something, or them pay our mass casualty unit to go there. It would cost close to that for one incident.
Yes,
if another city were to have to rent us for a mass casualty incident or something like
And
that.
I think the key too is these guys, just as PD, they're trained constantly for whatever team they may be associated with, and so they have a very qualified team in the event that it's mobilized, rather than trying to take your staff who's doing the regular duties and have them doing all of those various things in addition to the regular assignments.
This model has actually been duplicated in the county. There is a Southeast Response Protection Agency down with Burleson and some of the cities around in that area. What is it called? Metro Crest Group. When you've got Coppell and some of those, Louisville, they have done the same thing. I've actually got the opportunity to speak down at the Texas Fire Chiefs Conference on this NEFTA model, and it's something that other communities, groups of communities in the state definitely have interest in, because just the fact that Chief and I have been talking to you about is just sharing your resources and making you increase your ability to deal with these types of incidents that are rare, but when they do come up, they can be quite serious.
Wes, have either Fort Worth or Arlington ever needed any of our resources?
Fort Worth and Arlington, I don't know of any situations that Fort Worth is set up pretty well. We probably, as we did the Urban Shield just here a few months back, the region realized that NEFTA is actually about as well set up as Fort Worth is. Arlington is just a little behind us in some of their capabilities as a group, but I don't know of any situations that I can think of where Arlington or Fort Worth called us. For many years, if Arlington had an issue, they called Fort Worth. If Fort Worth they worked as the big two cities in Tarrant County. I really believe that's kind of going away, and you'll see those things change. Now, from a technical rescue standpoint, not too many years back, the rescue team was called outside of Tarrant County to go to Parker County on a rescue where a gentleman was caught in a collapse, a trench collapse, and then also to Crescent on a call where a man fell in what's called a mouse hole in a drilling site. And I was actually on that call. We rescued him about 60 feet down in the hole and pulled him out.
Mayor, they are, I can tell you from an emergency management standpoint, they are considered to be part of the regional assets. And they're on par with Arlington, Fort Worth, Dallas, that's the way they look at the group, that they're considered a huge regional asset for vast issues.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes, ma'am.
I think what we'll do now is, if, James, if you can stick with us, we'll break for